Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Economic Alliance Snohomish County's Coffee Chats. Thank you for joining us this morning and spending your morning with us. I'm Rachel Morera, Director of Community Engagement at EASC, and I'll be moderating today's conversation. At EASC, our mission is to strengthen Snohomish County's economy by bringing together business, government, education, and community leaders to address the opportunities and challenges shaping our region. Today's discussion, Circular Economy and Industrial Symbiosis from Efficiency to Opportunity, focuses on how businesses can improve efficiency, strengthen supply chains, and create new economic opportunities through collaboration. As organizations face rising resource costs and evolving supply chains, many are discovering innovative ways to turn challenges into competitive advantages by rethinking how materials, energy, and resources are used. We'll begin with a brief presentation from our featured speaker, Kyle Gitchell, with the Washington State Department of Commerce, who will provide an overview of Washington's circular economy initiatives and the opportunities they create for businesses across our state. Following Kyle's presentation, we'll transition into a moderated panel discussion featuring leaders who are helping organizations put these ideas into practice through business innovation, technical assistance, and advanced manufacturing. As always, if you are joining us via Zoom this morning, we encourage you to drop any questions you have on the topic in the chat. We'll relay them to speakers as time permits. Now, let's meet today's speakers. Kyle Gitchell is the Circular Economy Development Director for the Washington State Department of Commerce, where he leads statewide efforts to advance circular economy initiatives and strengthen business competitiveness, encourage innovation, and support more resilient supply chains across Washington. Kyle works with businesses, communities, and regional partners to develop programs that help turn resource challenges into economic opportunities. Kyle, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Bryce Hesterman is the senior consultant and director at RRS and program lead for Next Cycle Washington, where he helps connect businesses, entrepreneurs, researchers, and communities to accelerate circular economy projects throughout the Pacific Northwest. His work focuses on building partnerships that transform innovative ideas into scalable business solutions while creating new economic opportunities through resource recovery and material innovation. Bryce, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Joel Lippold is Director of Composites at the Composite Recycling Technology Center, or CRTC. Joel leads efforts to develop innovative applications for recycled composite materials, helping manufacturers identify practical solutions that reduce waste, create new products, and strengthen the region's advanced manufacturing ecosystem. Joel, welcome.
Hi. Thanks. Happy to be here.
And we're also pleased to welcome Reese Roth, Executive Director at the Center for Sustainable Infrastructure. CSI provides technical assistance to organizations implementing industrial symbiosis and has worked with businesses across Washington to adapt international models, including lessons learned from Denmark, to help organizations improve resource efficiency through collaboration. Reese, thanks for being here.
Thanks for including me, Rachel.
Thank you all for being here this morning. And Kyle, I'd like to turn it over to you to begin today's program with an overview of Washington's circular economy initiatives and the opportunities they present for businesses across our state.
Yeah, thank you. Excellent. So slide deck is up. Just wanted to, like Rachel had mentioned, give a brief overview, and thanks for spending some time with us this morning to talk about circular economy and industrial symbiosis. A very exciting topic. We'll go ahead and move on to the next slide here. So first, wanting to sort of level set, what is the circular economy? What is industrial symbiosis? Not common words in a lot of people's vernacular. And so when we think about the current economic space, typically, if we're producing something, it's in this linear form that you can see where you take, you make, you use, you waste. So you take some kind of a resource and you make something with it. People use that resource, they use the product, and then it's thrown out when it reaches its end of useful life. In a circular system, the circular economy is moving away from that take, make, use, waste, and really returning the product back into circulation, whether that be through things like recycling or reuse, the secondhand sales, recycled materials, things that people are pretty familiar with, or some of these things when we start talking about industrial symbiosis, where there's a lot of reuse in wastewater or heat exchange, or residual materials that are being captured and reused after industrial manufacturing processes. So really trying to reduce the amount of new resources that are introduced into the system while also reducing the amount of waste that that system is generating on the other side. Go ahead and go to the next slide here. So the economics of that, what ends up happening is you create a whole ecosystem of industry and employment. And while the circular economy is largely not a standalone industry on its own, there are some businesses in our state that really focus on a circular economic model specifically. Some of the key activities you can see on here, like prevention, waste prevention and circular design, and reuse and maintenance, refurbishment, recycling. There's a lot of different things that classify as activities that are circular, really centering around the reuse of those materials or whatever resources that we're talking about. It's a little bit less straightforward to measure circular economic activity, though, than it is some of the other industry sectors that we look at. And if we're looking at NAICS codes, so our national industry identifiers, there's 36,000 jobs at least that are being directly supported through circular economic activities. And that is only in those key activities that are identified by businesses as like, this is primarily what we do. We do one of these things. There's a ton of business activity that happens outside of that, which we'll hear about today, that isn't captured within those jobs. And so you can assume thousands more jobs that are supported by circular activities. Just recycling alone is a $3.5 to $4.5 billion annual revenue within the state, and about 9 to 11% of Washington's economy is circular currently. So there's room to grow. Next slide. So for industrial symbiosis, this is a tactic or strategy within the circular economy where we're looking at that really joining of industrial sites. Often this looks like co-locating, collaborative agreements between organizations to share and exchange materials, water, energy, byproducts from manufacturing. Some of the examples of that can look like material exchange. So, I manufacture something, I've got residuals that come off of it. My neighbor uses those residuals as a feedstock for their manufacturing, or it can look like things like water reuse, where I use water in the processing of my production process, and instead of sending that water directly to a treatment facility, it goes into my neighbor's pipelines for them to use that water. It might be hot, they need hot water, they use that there instead of producing new hot water. So it can seem really simple, but also very complex once you start integrating a bunch of different industries together. And the benefits from this, both environmental benefits, so we're looking at the reduction of new resources, we're looking at smarter, more efficient resource use. And that resource efficiency has impacts on the business side as well, because it's reducing costs for things like disposal fees, reducing energy costs, increasing energy efficiency, increasing resource efficiency on the business side. And there is a global market appetite for businesses to be behaving in more deliberate, more thoughtful ways when it comes to their interaction with resource usage. Next slide. So the state has a grant program. Thank you. The state has a grant program for industrial symbiosis that's been running for about 5 years now. So far, there's been 22 projects awarded and completed. There's another handful of projects that are in the pipeline right now. Some are in contract negotiation currently. That is in this current fiscal year. Up to this point, 5.1 million in investments have gone through that program, and you can see dotted all around the map. There are projects all over the state. And if we jump into the next slide here, I'll show there are some local examples of the circular economy in action. So if we're thinking about what's local to Snohomish County, in the manufacturing area, we had a consultant in the last grant round that worked with some businesses locally, Kettle Cuisine being one of them, to analyze waste streams and identify opportunities for composting and clean container reuse. You have Qualco Energy, which is a partnership with the Tulalip tribe. and they're using the manure from dairy cattle to process into renewable natural gas. There's about 500 customer homes roughly that are able to cut GHG emission and methane impacts and be able to be powered through that gas capture. And then there's a material reuse example here with Arlington Recycle, which is based in Mukilteo, which they recycle components from mattresses, which is one of very few, if maybe the only, recycler of its kind in the region. The pretty rare for that type of activity to be happening, and so that's an important material capture that's happening there. So lots of opportunity, stuff happening locally, some good examples there. And I'm gonna be quiet now until my question comes up, and we'll jump to the questions.
Thank you, Kyle, for helping to set the stage. We'd like to build on that foundation and bring the panel into the conversation to explore how this practice and how organizations are putting them, to explore what these ideas look like in practice and how organizations are putting them to work today. Bryce, we'll start with you. Next Cycle Washington works with businesses, entrepreneurs, and communities to identify opportunities for material reuse and resource innovation. From your perspective, what are some of the most exciting ways you've seen organizations create business value by looking at resources differently?
Yeah, thanks. It's a fun question, and it's actually a hard one because we've supported over 75 businesses and organizations over the past 4 years of Next Cycle Washington, and so many great business models have come through our program that it's tough to choose just a few, but I did go through the exercise and think of a few examples that would be worth sharing today. And so I guess to frame things a little bit, we tend to look at things as upstream and downstream solutions. And so upstream solutions are those that are like waste prevention, reuse, and product design, whereas downstream are those solutions that are focused on recycling or composting, something that converts a material into a feedstock for another process. So some good examples that come to mind that I thought were really great for Ocean Made is a really cool business where they are replacing virgin plastic in gardening and plant nursery pots, and they're making pots made from kelp byproducts. What's really cool about that is the pots. It's not only replacing plastics, which don't really belong in our land and our gardens, but the way it's made with the kelp, it actually provides nutrients to support the growth of the plants that it's holding. So that is a really great example of something that's not only supporting a circular economy, but a regenerative economy. So I always love that example. Another really good kind of downstream solution is a company called Ravel. They were from our first cohort. They were a startup focused on textile recycling. That's an area if you're not familiar, there's not a lot of recycling solutions at scale for that. And so what they are focused on is really solving a problem of mixed fibers, because as we know, many of our textiles have both polyester and elastane and cotton, and there's a blend, and it's really hard to recycle that into its component fibers as a result. So they innovated a process that can separate some of that and allows them to create high quality polyester fiber that can be respun into yarns for new products. So that's an example where they take this kind of complex material component and break it down into an input that can be used for a manufacturing process. Another example that's upstream is a company called Okapi, and they introduced a coffee cup reuse system at cafes in Oregon and Washington. And so that means that you don't need to bring your own cup from home to be sustainable and support reuse. You can actually borrow a cup from one cafe, take it with you, and return it to any other cafe in their system. So that's a really cool innovation that we like. And then finally, something that connects with our larger recycling system is a company called Glacier, where they've integrated AI and robotics, so kind of taking the latest in technology, and they've integrated that into some equipment for the sorting systems at our material recovery facility. And that's all aimed at really enhancing the capture rate at those facilities so that you have more assurance that whatever you put in the blue bin is going to get sorted into its right component and be recycled at its highest and best use. So I could go on and on. I'll leave it there and give some time for other folks, but you can check out our website and find a whole bunch of information about the 75 different teams that we've supported over the years.
So cool. I really hope this is sparking some ideas for folks on the call today. Joel, moving over to you, the Composite Recycling Technology Center is helping manufacturers find innovative uses for composite materials that might otherwise end up in a landfill. Can you tell us a little bit about CRTC's work and why innovation and material recovery matters to Washington's manufacturing economy?
Yeah, absolutely. So a little background, CRTC was founded as a 501c3 nonprofit in 2015. We originally were built around a really unique resource we have here in Washington, which is uncured carbon fiber prepreg. Much of that comes from Boeing's supplier, Toray, who they were critical in our founding, and they remain an important partner. This is a high-end engineered material that once it's no longer usable for its original application, there's relatively few places for it to go. We started pretty small. Our first facility was a few thousand square feet. We had one chest freezer for storing the prepreg and a 24-inch square compression molding press and essentially consumer-grade CNC router. Around that same time, pickleball was just starting to begin gaining traction. And that's a sport that was founded here in Washington on Bainbridge Island. And a pickleball paddle happened to be something that we could make very well with the tools that we had. That was our first product, and it truly put the benefits of carbon fiber to work. From there, we moved into our current facility, which was outfitted with support from the US EDA and the Port of Port Angeles. And our capabilities and product range have grown enormously ever since. Products we've developed range from, we have multiple patented pickleball net systems. We have bench systems designed for extreme environments. We have aquaculture farming systems that use carbon fiber rope. It eliminates entanglement in marine life, which is a huge component of that farming problem. And then we also do orthotic components that help them live their best life. And so these are all very different products, but the common thread here is that we're taking the properties of this carbon fiber and we're putting them where they provide an actual advantage. And so as we grew, we kind of took that same philosophy beyond carbon fiber, and we started looking around our community for other materials whose value wasn't being fully realized. We'd routinely see coastal western hemlock from our local macaw tribe leave the port en route to overseas markets without them having captured much of the value. And so through our partnership with the macaw and some grant-funded research, we now thermally modify that hemlock to enhance its properties, and we sell it as a premium building material. Beyond that, we're producing our own scaled-down cross-laminated timber with it. We've designed and integrated those CLTs into our rapid deployment structures that we've worked on with Searle, and we're now working on our own first demonstration model of an engineered flat pack home. And so we hope to get into the housing market and help people with being able to buy their first homes. Manufacturing those products, especially the wood products, generates a large amount of shavings and dust. And at the same time, one of the challenges in carbon fiber composites recycling has always been what to do with post-cured carbon fiber waste. So that led us to our latest initiative, which is an industrial symbiosis development grant with the Washington Department of Commerce. And what we're doing is combining those materials with plastic waste streams from other local industries. There's UHMWPE, which is a high-end polymer from Mervyn Manufacturing, ski and snowboard production in Carlsbad, Washington. And there's HDPE oyster bags from Taylor Shellfish and other local shellfish farms. And so the goal of this isn't just validating the concept that we can do it, which we did last year in partnership with Wazoo, but we want to create a commercially viable product, composite wood product. And first, it's going to be for our own building systems that we're doing, and then hopefully for the broader commercial market. And so that really highlights two concepts I think are critical to having driven CRTC. And the first is that we design products around our materials. We start by understanding what makes that material valuable, and then we develop products that take advantage of those properties. And the second is we manufacture and sell products so that we can continue to fund our R&D. We're not looking to maximize profit. What we're looking to do is maximize value. The value of the materials, the value of our team and our knowledge and capabilities, and the value of our role in the community. And I think that's why material recovery matters to Washington's manufacturing economy. We have incredible resources here. And if we connect those resources with local knowledge, manufacturing capabilities, and markets, we're doing a whole lot more than keeping it out of the landfill. We're creating new products, we're building expertise, we're supporting good jobs, and we're keeping that value here in Washington.
Incredible. Thank you. So how would I know if my paddle for my pickleball came from your byproduct?
Great question. We don't make paddles anymore. That industry got very competitive, and so we remained in the pickleball market. But those two patented net systems, one of them is our own, and the other we produce for Selkirk Sport, which is a pickleball lifestyle brand, one of the biggest in the world. Those are the things that we still do in pickleball. So you won't be able to get our paddles anymore, but you can certainly play on one of our nets.
Very cool. Reese, CSI has worked with organizations across Washington to implement industrial symbiosis and has helped bring lessons from successful international models like those in Denmark to our state. What does industrial symbiosis actually look like in practice, and what have you learned from helping organizations build these partnerships?
Yeah, Rachel, thanks. We found that we've just developed an amazing partnership here in Washington with the country of Denmark, CSI. We've had the privilege of touring Denmark to see industrial symbiosis in action with over 250 business leaders and industry leaders and elected leaders and economic development leaders, state agency folks. Denmark really invented the concept of industrial symbiosis as an economic and industrial development strategy 50 years ago, and it's just been evolving and diversifying across the country ever since. So when we go on these tours, we see it in all sorts of contexts and scales. And two examples there that are really compelling to Pacific Northwest folks we found. Kalundborg. The Kalundborg symbiosis is the world's oldest. That's where industrial symbiosis was really invented 50 years ago. And now you've got, it's a town of just 17,000 people, but you've got one of the world's leading pharmaceutical manufacturers, Novo Nordisk, as the anchor tenant there. Industrial symbiosis is really built into their DNA as a company. They're producing half the world's insulin. They invented this Ozempic line of products, GLP-1s, and around them is a network of 15, 16 major industrial facilities, and they're all linked by shared symbiosis infrastructure where they're sharing heat and energy, the organic waste streams that are in wastewater are captured, biodigested to produce renewable natural gas that's powering a lot of the facilities. The water is cycled multiple times into cleaned and then recycled into industrial processes. So it's energy, water, materials, and they're generating something on the order of $28 million in economic value a year just through resource sharing, through about 30 different resource sharing partnerships. And that's $2,000 to $3,000 for every man, woman, and child in the city of Kalundborg. And they're reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 600,000 tons a year. At the other end of the spectrum, so that's been evolving and complexifying over 50 years in a small town called Skiva, Denmark, which was a farming community that was kind of dying. The kids just didn't find anything to keep them there. Not a lot of economic vitality. They would be moving away to the city. The town knew they had to do something, and so they said, "We're gonna create a green industrial park." And so they intentionally set out to do that, and converted some farmland into an industrial park where they've built, since they've started to deploy and build in the last 5 years, they've deployed $450 million, about 50 million in public money, 400 million in private. There's six large industrial facilities, and it's all connected with clean, circular infrastructure, symbiotic infrastructure to supply all the needs of these industries so that it's plug and play for them to come and get clean, carbon-free heat. The water cycling is handled. Things like the material flows are handled. nitrogen, which I didn't even know was a piece of infrastructure that industry needed. That's all available to them affordably and in a very clean way. So we're seeing that those 250 leaders from Washington and Oregon that have toured Denmark have come back here and are innovating, bringing the inspiration and the examples that we've seen in Denmark to a variety of communities across Washington that Kyle has pointed out, and that program that Kyle runs, the Industrial Symbiosis program, is sending grants out and providing technical assistance to communities that is sparking all kinds of innovation across the region.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for bringing these innovations and technologies back to Washington. Kyle, perfect segue to you. We've now heard several examples of circular economy principles in action. Looking at the bigger picture, how do organizations like Next Cycle, CSI, and CRTC fit into Washington's broader circular economy strategy? And why has the state invested in building this ecosystem?
Yeah, great question. The way that these organizations fit is that our circular economy team at the Department of Commerce is two people, myself and Leslie Perkins, and we cannot be everywhere all the time. Also, as you've heard across these examples, a lot of our work ends up being sort of an inch deep and a mile wide. We're looking at there's a lot of potential across multiple industries, material types, resource reuse technologies. The work that is happening on the ground is really from the folks who are doing the innovating, doing the research and development, folks like Joel's team who are getting in there and figuring out what to do. We do a lot of connecting and networking and orchestrating, making sure money is getting to the places that it needs to be. And that's where folks like Bryce and the Next Cycle team come in handy with helping those innovators really scale up and figure out how to make their business more commercially viable, because there are a number of opportunities, but there's, starting a business, running these things can be difficult, especially when you're working in an innovation space. And when we're thinking about the CSI and their engagement, they're currently running the technical assistance program that we have funded through the Department of Commerce. They're providing the information, the knowledge exchange, doing a lot of the connecting around the state and internationally, as you heard from the examples that Reese is providing. So just as industrial symbiosis and its concepts require collaboration between businesses, I think supporting a circular economy requires collaboration. I mean, we're talking about an ecosystem that we're constructing here, and that can't happen with just one or two people sitting at the state doing that. So that partnership with private entities needs to exist to really make this happen. As to the why, I don't really see a way that we maintain a strong economic foundation while also meeting climate commitment goals without resource efficiency. These are things, I mean, we as a state have determined that it's really important for us to have goals that are committed to supporting our natural ecosystems, our natural environment, keeping I've got a picture of like the Lady Washington and Mount Rainier and all this stuff behind me. It's gorgeous. The state is gorgeous. We have a lot of natural resources available to us, and we need to steward those while also making sure that we're providing the jobs and the economic support and the growth for folks that are living within the state and able to appreciate the natural resources and the beauty of the state. So it's a combination of both things. And the investments in the circular economy, the investments in things like the Next Cycle Washington program, things like the Industrial Symbiosis Grants program, the technical assistance, is a reflection of the importance of being able to do that. And there are new opportunities for us to have if we're capturing our resources effectively. I mean, there's job markets that are untapped. There's manufacturing markets that are untapped. We're seeing increases in things like critical mineral recovery, for example, is a big hot button issue federally and internationally, because you see a concentration of critical minerals in one or two places globally. And those are going into all of our technologies, all the things that we use. The computer that we're holding this meeting on require those materials. And if we want to have access to them when international trade can sometimes be volatile, having a domestic market, having a domestic supply chain means resource efficiency and resource capture. So there's a number of different whys that are wrapped in there. that are all great reasons to be engaging and expanding our circular economy.
Thank you. Bryce, many businesses are interested in these concepts but aren't sure where to begin. What advice would you give an organization that's looking to identify its first circular economy opportunity or partnership?
Yeah, thanks for that. I would start by saying connect with us at NextCycle. I think in the packet that's sent out afterwards, the email that's sent out will provide some links for that. But as Kyle referred to a little bit, NextCycle is a program that is intended to support some of these businesses, and we meet businesses where they are, whether they are just starting off or if they are mature and are looking to grow. And so there's a place for you in our network, in our program. The core of the program is this accelerator that is a cohort-based program where we have an application process and businesses and organizations can apply to participate. That's kind of like the most advanced technical assistance that you can get. And so it's a 6-month program. It provides assistance such as business planning, supply chain connectivity, market validation, fundraising support, and a lot of other areas that's really specific to that business's needs. We develop individualized work plans with them. It also includes a collaborative learning series, which starts with a 3-day academy that we hold at the Ecology headquarters in Lacey. And so that's at the beginning of the program. Then we work one-on-one with these teams through their work plan. Each organization is paired with an experienced consultant and introduced to various subject matter experts, depending on what their needs are. And then the program ends with a pitch showcase at the end, which really provides skill building around storytelling and building support from customers, investors, and really being able to kind of force them to really pare down what it is they're doing and understand at the very fundamental level, what is it that I want to do and how can I communicate that to get support from investors, from early adopters, from customers, from other supply chain partners, and just generally building awareness of the work that they're doing to gain support. And so that's kind of, if you want the most level of support, you can apply for the program. We expect our applications for this coming year to be opening sometime in late September. Our tentative date is September 23rd, but we don't quite have that nailed down yet. But we'll definitely give some links that'll allow you to stay tuned. And then the program itself is going to run from January to June of next year. So that's the best way if you want to really kind of advance your ideas if you already have an idea. We also have a partnership program where really any business, organization, even local governments can engage and just get connected to understand what's happening, who's doing what. We see ourselves as really an ecosystem builder and network builder. And so we're always happy to engage, hear the questions, provide whatever advice we can, and then direct them and make connections. Like Kyle said, they see themselves as really these connectors. That's kind of feeds through NextCycle as well. And so we have links on our website that you can sign up for office hours. We want to be really available. And so you can always talk to, oftentimes like you can find a link to my calendar and set up a meeting with me, next week if you wanted to, and we could chat about what your interests are and kind of go from there. Beyond that, I would just mention that the Recycling Market Development Center, which is housed at Ecology and is a partnership with Kyle and Leslie at Commerce. That's the agency that funds NextCycle. They also do a lot of work of their own, and I saw a couple folks in the meeting room from there, and they also convene folks around specific topics such as textiles. Is a recent symposium that they had. They brought a room of 100 people together to talk about that specific issue, textile circularity. So getting connected with them is another way, and then look at your your local governments, like your solid waste divisions at the municipal and at the county level. There's a lot going on, and connecting with them, you can understand like what ideas are out there, who's working on what are the needs that they need filled, and that's a really good starting point as well. Because you want to start with solving a problem. Sometimes you have to identify what that problem is and see what material focus there might be in your specific location. I saw in the chat someone mentioned Pacific Northwest Climate Week. That's always a great place where people come together. There's a lot of activity, and it really feels like there's a critical mass growing. And I'd say in general, like there are a lot of people that are engaged on this topic, and there are frequent meetings and engagements. And so if you kind of just keep your eyes open, talk to those of us that are involved, we can get you connected to meetings, gatherings, and really joining the ecosystem of doers, of supporters within the circular economy. And really, we see that's essential for kind of advancing these ideas and goals is building coalition of people that are working together. This is really, we see it as, this isn't building in a competitive economic space. This is really like a cooperative economic space. And there's a lot of people that are willing to support and help. So yeah, that's where you might start and kind of where you might go from there.
Thank you, Bryce. Fantastic advice. We have some interactions coming in the chat. Lauren Bright has a question. She said, for the accelerator, must you be a for-profit organization, a nonprofit organization? Is there space for collaborative efforts which connect businesses in a new industrial symbiotic way? Example, the innovation is the new system, not necessarily the tech.
Yeah. So absolutely, for-profits, nonprofits, and collaborations are all allowed. You don't need to have there have been teams that have come in that have been they don't have an organization yet, and one thing that we help them with is decide, are you going to be an LLC or a 501c3? Like that's some decisions that they have to make. And so yeah, those collaborations are something that exists. There's a great story from our first cohort where there's two different nonprofits. One was a national nonprofit representing glass manufacturers. One was a local nonprofit trying to recycle glass bottles from wineries. We saw their applications. We're like, you know what? You all should meet. And they actually ended up creating a project and coming on as a collaboration. And it became big recyclers. And now they're doing glass recycling in central and eastern Washington, which didn't exist before. And so like the national organization is helping to connect the supply to the end markets because that's who they represent, that's their membership, while the local guys are out there talking to wineries and getting them signed up to bring their glass for collection. So we absolutely encourage that, and so yeah, if you have an idea in that category, like we would love to support that kind of concept.
Thank you, Bryce. Another interaction from the chat, Peter Langley, who is with the Jefferson County Manufacturing Association and owner of Port Townsend Foundry, says he has a great opportunity and would like to connect with Kyle and others. So as Bryce mentioned, we will send out a post-event email with contact information for our speakers and resource materials from today's conversation. So we will help you facilitate those connections, and that's why we're here today. Another question in the chat, Gail Ledberg says, are there grants available to small cities to work with small businesses such as restaurants and tourist-oriented businesses to explore how they might be able to enter into collaborative circular relationships? This comes from an effort to build a regenerative local economy along the lines of regenerative Monterey. Kyle, that might be for you.
Yeah, that is the kind of thing that would fit in the Industrial Symbiosis grant program where you have multiple businesses working together to sort of collaborate around a waste to value opportunity. That's really the core of what we're trying to fund there. We do not have one open right now, but we'll see when we launch the next round after the budget setting cycle. That's the big question looming over the next round. So anticipating the soonest we would be able to open another round of that grant would be fall of 2027 after the next budget is implemented.
Thank you, Kyle. We'll be on the lookout for that, and we'll be sure to reshare that information when it becomes available. Joel, we're going to move back to you. Innovation often means balancing technical feasibility with business realities. What challenges have you encountered in bringing recycled composite materials into commercial applications? And what lessons have you learned along the way?
Yeah, that's kind of the $1 million question for us. It's a really unique set of challenges from traditional product design and manufacturing. And this is by no means a comprehensive list, but a couple examples. If you put a piece of carbon fiber in front of a group of engineers, we can come up with thousands of ideas for things to make out of it. The hard question to answer is which of those ideas makes sense to manufacture. One of the first filters for us is our manufacturing process. We're inherently limited to high temp processes due to the resin system. And in advanced composites, tooling and conventional production equipment can be incredibly expensive. We have access to this extraordinary material at a relatively low cost, but that advantage disappears very quickly if we need hundreds of thousands of dollars in specialized equipment just to turn it into one product. So what we've learned is to design around relatively low cost and highly flexible manufacturing technologies. We like uncomplicated tooling. We like processes that can produce simple shapes that we can easily turn into finished products. And we also generally avoid expensive aesthetic finishing. That's important because most of the carbon fiber we get doesn't have the woven appearance that people associate with carbon fiber. What we get isn't decorative material. It's an engineered material that was designed for optimal performance in, honestly, some of the most extreme environments imaginable. We don't want to spend a lot of money trying to make it look like somebody's idea of what carbon fiber is. We want to put it into applications where the actual properties, strength to weight ratio, stiffness, corrosion resistance, durability, toughness, where those all create value. Another thing to consider is almost no product is made entirely out of carbon fiber, right? So every new product introduces another set of decisions. What are the other components we're putting in there? Where do we source them from? What are their material properties? How do we make sure they complement the advantages of carbon fiber? If we're going to use carbon fiber, we want to make sure that the components we put with it are going to perform just as well as the carbon fiber itself. They should be complementary to it. And so simply put, the material itself becomes a major design constraint for us rather than a design variable. And so we make design choices to fit the material rather than material choices to fit the design, which is a much more traditional way to design and manufacture. Another huge factor for us is scale. Conventional manufacturing, you can forecast your demand and you can order a corresponding amount of raw material. You can develop just-in-time programs, and we can't necessarily do that. We don't know exactly how much carbon fiber, we don't know the exact format, and we don't know when we're going to receive it. So we have to be able to dynamically adjust our production scales based on material availability. We're not going to commit to something we can't deliver, and that means that the products we choose, and critically, the manufacturing systems we develop, they have to allow us to tune our output based on the input. And another important reality that I think it spans across the entire recycling industry is recycled content by itself doesn't generally drive people to buy the product. Our products still have to be cost competitive, and ideally they need to be better performing. Sustainability can be an additional benefit, but we can't rely on it as a primary value prop. And then another constraint is there's applications we intentionally don't pursue. The material we receive isn't certified for use in its original applications, and we personally do testing in our lab to understand and validate our products, but we're not going to be providing material certs. And importantly, along those lines, we don't ever want to compete with our primary suppliers' customers. They're the reason why we have these materials, and we wouldn't want to do anything to jeopardize their success. So within all that, I think we've learned that two things are absolutely critical to our success with non-traditional material supplies. And the first is that we need partners in product development who really know their market. We know composites and manufacturing, but we don't pretend to know the other markets. Our best partnerships are with companies that understand their customers, that understand the problem they're trying to solve, and that genuinely want to be a part of figuring out how to use the material effectively. And the second thing, and this is critical, and it's one of my favorite parts about working here, is we have to have a very dynamic team. Every member of our team brings something exceptional to the table, and what we do is always changing. We have different materials, we have different processes, different product lines, and with all that, different problems. Without a team that's willing to learn and adapt and step outside of their comfort zone, none of this really works. And so I think that's probably the biggest lesson we've learned overall is the challenge isn't coming up with something you can make from it. The challenge is finding something that makes sense to make from it, technically, economically, and commercially.
Thank you. Reese, one of the biggest strengths of industrial symbiosis is collaboration across industries. What makes these partnerships successful, and what role do organizations like EASC play in helping connect businesses that may not otherwise find one another?
Yeah, it's spot on that industrial symbiosis is really all about collaboration and bridging silos, and in many ways it's a uh, exploration of potential partnerships. It's kind of a journey of discovery, and agencies, organizations like uh, EASC, uh, business associations, economic development agencies, ports. These are entities that um, aren't specialized in energy or water or material management. They kind of can convene folks across those kind of resource silos and across business categories to explore where those partnerships and where the economic opportunities might be in symbiosis. Just one example. Um, Boy, we worked with one of the major cities in Washington, and they had a gummy bear factory, and the gummy bear factory was spending tens of thousands of dollars a month to dispose of this gummy slurry into the wastewater treatment system. The wastewater treatment system, it was very expensive for them to manage that high octane kind of gummy slurry waste. So they had to charge this much. But in one of these industrial symbiosis conversations that the local economic development agency was convening, brought together a neighboring wastewater treatment plant to tour the gummy bear factory and got to talking about that gummy slurry. And they said, you know what? We have a deficit at our wastewater treatment plant of kind of this carbon. We're having to add kind of plastic toxic, some toxic chemicals to our wastewater treatment process to get the pH right so that the bugs can do their work and we can treat the water. Is there any way that we could get your gummy slurry because that could replace those chemicals and allow us to balance our system in a way that's much more cost effective for us. The gummy bear factory was like, "Oh, well, that would be mighty nice." So they're deep into exploring that. But ports, horrific agencies too, and economic alliances and EDCs have great relationships with local ports. Ports can be great conveners. Pete in Jefferson County, Clallam EDC, Aaron Berg at the Port of Port Townsend. I'm sure you're talking with him. These are great partners who've doing a lot of work on convening around industrial symbiosis. And you see ports um, in Wenatchee, in Moses Lake, in Pend Oreille, in Tacoma, uh, all across the state. Ports are convening local businesses, having conversations, exploring opportunities for shared infrastructure, bringing together the different utilities from the different silos who often don't get invited to look beyond the silo of, oh, we're just an electric utility. Oh, we're just wastewater utility. We manage our utilities a lot like that in the US. In Denmark, we have a lot more multi-utilities where we can look at integrated solutions that span energy, water, organic materials to optimize for cost and sustainability. So there's tremendous opportunities, but organizations like yours can do that convening to begin the conversation. When we're running businesses, we tend to be focused on our bread and butter, our product line and our service. And it's real nice sometimes to just have an opportunity to convene, have those open exploratory conversations, and discover where there might be partnerships, symbiotic partnerships, where we can both gain economically and we can make the system more affordable and sustainable overall.
Thank you. Kyle, Washington has become a national leader in advancing circular economy initiatives. Looking ahead over the next 5 to 10 years, where do you see the greatest opportunities for businesses and regional economies to benefit from this work?
Hmm. Uh, I think that a lot of it comes actually from what Reese was just talking about, which is sitting down and asking the questions of what do you have, really changing the mindset away from what is the waste that we're generating to a what is the asset that we're generating in that sense? Because I cannot remember where I heard this from, but somebody had told me like there's no such thing as waste, it's just resources in the wrong place. And so if we're really thinking about the stuff that's being produced as we're manufacturing, doing business, what is that stuff? And regionally, what's the makeup of that stuff? I think a lot of our economic development, more traditionally, we know power loads that we have available. We know our water load, that water amount that we have available for industrial siting. We know what the real estate picture looks like. We know what our natural resources look like. And so, sort of doing this paradigm shift of what is that waste that's being developed regionally and how can we capitalize on that is something to really be looking at. I think there's a good example of that going on in like Lewis County, where they have this huge wood basket. It's a lot of forestry takes place in the region, and so they've got a bioenergy development opportunity zone certification where they went and had this assessed and said, this is the amount of wood that we have, not just new wood, but also the wood waste, and what are our economic opportunities that we can capitalize on the waste that's coming off of the mills and the existing logging. So without doing any logging expansion, they have several thousands of tons of wood available that can go into different processes. Like right now, there's conversations around sustainable fuels. What does it look like to take that waste stream and put it into sustainable fuels development? What does it look like to take it and turn it into a material like biochar for agricultural treatment or wastewater treatment opportunities? What does it look like to maybe contact Joel and say, hey, we've got this wood waste available. What sort of cool composites are you guys working on? So I think that's more than one specific market opportunity. A lot of the opportunity right now exists in just recognizing the resource that is available in the local waste stream. There are a couple of specific material types I had mentioned, like critical mineral recovery is one. There's a huge battery market that has really started to explode and come online with EV battery or EV adoption, preparing for end of life of EVs as they're coming off the road, and being able to capture like the lithium from the batteries, the other minerals and materials that are coming off of those. Electronics recycling, there's a lot of opportunity there. Or if we're looking at like textiles, that is one of the least captured effectively material streams in our waste right now. There's a gap. The largest gap between what's actually being processed and what's being captured at the bin is the biggest in textiles. So there's a number of different things you could look at. Like our colleagues at the Recycling Market Development Center over at Ecology have developed a waste characterization study. They update this periodically. If you're curious on like what does the municipal solid waste in the state look like, that's a great thing to go and look at, but also just having these conversations locally and saying, what are our assets instead of what are we throwing away? What could we be using?
Reframe the way we're thinking. Assets, not waste. Bryce, supply chain resilience has become a priority for organizations of every size. How can circular economy strategies help businesses become more resilient while also improving operational performance and competitiveness?
Yeah, that's a great question and really timely, and it kind of builds off of Kyle's last statement about kind of finding out what is available locally. Because the way we look at it, place really matters, and we often talk about circular solutions and circular economy being local solutions and really representing resiliency. And inherently circularity is a local and regional solution, and by design. And so some examples here. So we've seen like the geopolitical and public health issues affect global supply chains, and that's really where we got a shock several years ago. So during COVID, for example, there was a short supply of inputs for paper mills and plastic manufacturers, and we saw the markets for recycled paper and plastic skyrocket as buyers were scrambling for feedstock. And this really, those market movements really highlighted the importance and resiliency offered by more localized recycled supply chains, because that's what they had to fall back on when the global supply chains broke. They fell back on these local recovered supply chains, and they weren't, the supply wasn't quite there to meet the need. And so as we build that, we're providing more resiliency for those kind of shocks that you might see in the global supply chain. So that's really important. And like I said, the circular solutions are inherently local and regional. We see them as a pathway for those shorter supply chains, moving materials closer to home, which improves efficiency. Having relationships, this is really a relationship-driven movement, and having the relationships among the supply chain and building trust and community is really important from our perspective. That keeps not only the materials and value within those communities, but it creates jobs within those communities. And we're really kind of insulating the communities and creating resilience through the capture of value from those materials, as Kyle's been talking about. So that's what I would say there. It's really philosophically, it goes hand in hand with being a resilient supply chain.
Thank you. We are approaching the end of our session today, so I'd love to close it out with one final question for everyone. And Kyle, we'll start with you. If you could leave today's audience with one practical takeaway or first step that they could implement within the next year to improve efficiency, strengthen partnerships, or explore these circular economy opportunities, what would it be?
It's going to be a sort of a repeat of what I said in the last thing, which is really doing that assessment of what is it that we're producing, what is it that we're throwing out as we're producing it, and who might need that. Just understanding your neighbor, understanding your local business ecosystem, and really figuring out where your materials might fit. And if you don't have a place for them to go, reach out and maybe we can help you find a place for them to go, or reach out to Rachel, because I know that you're also interested at the EASC about these conversations. So yeah, let's figure out what we can do that's productive.
I'm happy to play matchmaker. Reese, we'll move to you. What's one final closing remark today? Something you'd love for attendees to leave with?
Uh, Industrial symbiosis opportunities are going to be unique to every community, different in every community, as different as the makeup of local businesses, but it really can apply in the smallest towns to the biggest cities. I think thinking in terms of industrial parks or hubs that can be networked with industrial symbiosis, and then investing in sort of the convening, organizations like this one that can bring businesses together with local leaders and local agencies to facilitate that exploratory conversation and give permission to look across the silos, look across the fence line of our business and see what the opportunities might be. Can we build shared infrastructure to take advantage of these symbiotic potentials? So you guys play a critical role. Really appreciate you convening this conversation, for example.
Thank you for being here. Joel, any final words?
Yeah, I mean, it's going with the theme, but my takeaway is pretty straightforward. Build strong relationships. I think we sometimes look at other organizations through the lens of competition. How can we do better than them? What do they have that we want? Or what can we get out of this? And I'd encourage people to turn it around and ask, how can we make each other better? Washington has incredible manufacturing, research, government, academic, nonprofit, and economic development communities. And I really believe we should look at that community throughout Washington and beyond as one team. And that doesn't mean businesses are going to stop competing. There are benefits to competition in business, but it does mean recognizing that there are enormous opportunities to be had when we work collaboratively. And I say that because virtually all of the great things that have happened at CRTC have come through partnership. I've listed quite a few of them, and you'll recognize there's no single type of organization that's tying it together. We've worked with private companies, government agencies, public organizations, nonprofits, universities and academics, tribal partners, and honestly, a good amount of just individuals. The common thread isn't any one industry, it's that our values align. And it's finding people and organizations that believe the work is important, not just because sustainability and circularity are good ideals, but because we want to make things that we want to use, and we want to make things that improve people's lives, and we want those processes that we use to improve our communities. So if I had to give somebody one practical thing to take over the next year, would be to find like-minded organizations and start asking questions. Talk about what you're doing, talk about what you're struggling with, and talk about what they're working on. Be curious and ask the questions about what capabilities might complement each other, and approach those conversations from the perspective of how can we help each other rather than what do they have that I want. You don't necessarily need to have a project in mind either. We've had some of our most important relationships didn't start out with a defined product or a business transaction. They began with communication and a shared interest in solving problems. So I would say build relationships, build community, ask questions, and communicate with honesty and integrity.
Thank you, Joel. Bryce, you want to close us out?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, that was a fantastic answer, Joel. And I say like +1 to all of that. And I guess the only thing I would add is that there is a lot of this work that's already being done. There's a lot of solutions that are out there, and sometimes the issue is just getting it adopted, getting people aware of it. And so, we don't need to be out there reinventing the wheel. And so it's getting informed on what is already happening, what solutions are out there, and how can I scale a solution that's already existing, and adopt that personally within my organization with others. And so it's really seeking out connectivity, building relationships with those that are already doing it, and then finding those solutions that are already starting and how can we scale that.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for being here, Kyle, Bryce, Joel, Reese, and all of you joining us this morning. Today's conversation demonstrated that circular economy and industrial symbiosis are about much more than reducing waste. They're about strengthening businesses, improving operational efficiency, building more resilient supply chains, and creating new opportunities for innovation and economic growth. What makes that possible is collaboration, as has been said today. Businesses, manufacturers, educators, technical experts, utilities, and economic development organizations all have a role to play in creating a stronger and more competitive regional economy. At EASC, we're proud to serve as a convener for conversation like today's because meaningful innovation happens when organizations come together to share ideas, solve challenges, and identify new opportunities. If today's discussion sparked ideas for your business, we'd love to continue the conversation. Through EASC's Business Retention and Expansion, or BRE program, our Director of Economic Development, Daniel Tapana, works directly with local employers to better understand their challenges, identify opportunities for growth, such as those discussed today, and connect them with valuable resources to help strengthen their long-term success here in Snohomish County. So please reach out to us if you have an idea or you'd like more information. And before we wrap up, just a couple quick announcements. On Wednesday, August 26th, we'd love for you to join us for EASC's signature Summer Tradition, Summer Networking. This year, we're co-hosting the event with the Snohomish Chamber of Commerce, presented by the Boeing Company. It will take place at the beautiful Feather Ballroom in downtown Snohomish. So whether you're looking to make new connections or reconnect with colleagues or simply enjoy an evening with the regional business community, we hope you'll join us. Our next coffee chat session is on Tuesday, September 15th, and it is titled Workforce Reality Check, Challenges, Solutions, and What's Next. And it's presented by the Port of Everett. As employers continue to navigate hiring challenges, workforce shortages, evolving skills needs, and changing employee expectations, we'll explore how collaborations across business, education, and workforce organizations can strengthen talent pipelines. Join us for a practical conversation featuring regional leaders who are sharing innovative strategies. To register for events and to learn more about EASC and our work, please visit economicalliancesc.org or scan the code on your screen. And thank you all again for joining us this morning. Before we sign off, let's switch to gallery view so we can see everyone one last time. And as we wrap up today's conversation, it's tradition for us to raise our coffee mugs to a stronger partnership, innovative thinking, and a more resilient, competitive future for Snohomish County. We hope you all have a wonderful day, and we hope to see you at Summer Networking. Thank you
Cheers.
all.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.